It's all about what I really want to do. Where do I see the need? Where can I make a difference? The way I take every leadership role that I have and everything that I get to do within leadership is basically looking at the member. Our members really love feeling like they're heard. One of the things that we do within our association is going to Tallahassee, going to Washington, and advocating as far as for our members along with the public that we serve. What my drive is to make sure that my clients are always the best protected. So by me being able to be there and being part of this and being part of the conversation, I'm looking out for my clients.
Hello, our world. Welcome back to another episode of Our World Talk. We've got a guest that is coming back to us again, Mr. Kenny Silverman. Welcome, Kenny.
Good morning, Chris. Thank you for having me.
So you guys obviously know Kenny. If you've been watching this podcast, listening to the podcast, you know that Kenny was here maybe 2.5 years ago. That was back in season 1. Over the years, Kenny, you've earned significant recognition for your leadership and impact, including graduating from the Leadership Academy in 2015. Best class ever. Kenny and I actually served in the same Leadership Academy back in 2015, both graduates. Maggie Dunn was our chair back then. You've also received the Joe M. Wright Political Involvement Award. That was back in 2016. Also the Myrtle T. Andy Anderson Memorial Leadership Award, just racking up awards over here at Our World. You have contributed as an RPAC major investor at the platinum level since 2016. Thank you very, very much for that. You were inducted into the RPAC Hall of Fame in 2020. And more recently, I believe it was just this past year or this current year, walked the stage in DC for your double Hall of Fame recognition. That's absolutely huge. Thank you. I speak on behalf of realtors across the country when I say thank you for that. Active involvement with Florida Realtors, the National Association. You continue to just influence policy and mentorship initiatives. So welcome back. Welcome back to the podcast. Super excited to have you here this morning. Before we dive into your role as our incoming president-elect, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, where you're from, how you got started in real estate, and sort of what shaped your path to leadership?
Well, good morning again, Chris, and thank you again for having me. So I do want to say a shout out last year when I got to walk, or this year when I got to walk the stage with Hall of Fame, double Hall of Fame. I got to do that with Karen Johnson, which is one of our past presidents. So the fact that she was walking it for the second time also, it was really a pleasure to be able to do that. So as far as for myself, I grew up in Brooklyn. And then, as most people, I left Brooklyn and took I-95 and moved to Fort Lauderdale. So it was just
Is that what everybody in Brooklyn does?
only the smart ones. So a lot of us actually. So yeah, growing up as a young child, I lived in a building. There was only 70 units within the building itself that we lived in. 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartment. My mom, my 2 sisters. Great way to start. Looked out of my window and I would see another building, right? Actually, Jeff Levine, who is one of our past presidents here within our association and will be the 2027 president-elect and 2028 president for Florida Realtors, we actually lived in the same building. So it's just kind of crazy that out of the entire, city of Brooklyn, here we are, Jeff Levine and myself are both living in the same building in a 70-unit building. So early on, my mom always talked about, having a home. And we didn't own a home. We lived in this rental apartment. And she talked about, having a home ownership and how it changes everything. And her brother had a house that we used to go visit upstate New York. And he owned his own house. And we would do all of our family functions at that house. We'd have our holidays at that house. And every time we would go there, it was always talking about, besides for my uncle, it was talking about the house itself and about how he's lucky that he has a house and how different things happen to him because of the house. And that kind of gave me my drive to want to own my own house. A funny story about that actually that I didn't know until later on in life was when we used to go there, and it was about an hour and a half drive to get there. He had a really long driveway, like to get to his house. And it always smelled like really awesome. And it was fresh cut grass. And I never understood that, and probably I already lived here. I already lived in Florida when I found out that he used to make my cousin cut the grass right before we got there.
Oh,
So
that's funny.
the house not only looked beautiful and you'd hear the stories about it, but then you'd also go out there and, like, the grass smelled great. So it just I've always even to this day, when somebody cuts their grass and I smell that grass, it just reminds me of that. So
Something so funny that, people take for granted is the smell of fresh cut grass. When you live in a big city like that, there's not a whole heck of a lot of grass to go around. So, yeah, that's probably something rare that you wouldn't have had as a child.
100%. So reality was living in Brooklyn, it's really hard, to be able to buy your own first home. Nobody in my family, except for my uncle, owned his own home. So I would visit Florida. Most of us had grandparents who had places here, and I fell in love with Florida, and I thought it was a great place. And I looked into what the real estate market was like, and it was an opportunity to be able to buy a home here in Florida. I had a job that I worked that I was able to transfer here. I was very lucky. So before I was a realtor, and most of us have had previous careers, and that was the federal government. So I was able to transfer from New York to Fort Lauderdale, which was really actually a great thing. I'll give you a little secret. When you transfer with the government, they won't lower your pay grade, your pay salary. So when I moved here to Florida, they kept me at the pay grade of New York, but then I didn't have to pay state tax. So wow,
Jackpot.
I just got this huge raise, which was really awesome, to be able to come here and have that. So that's really what's driving me all this time.
Okay. Well, you've served in many capacities within our association. You and I have been on every committee together, corporate board for a number of years. What inspired you to take on leadership roles? And what keeps you motivated to serve at the level that you're serving? I mean, you've been on the executive team for a number of years now, and now you're next in line to actually lead this organization. Well, what is really driving you and keeping you motivated outside from what you had just mentioned?
So with everything I get to do with my clients with their home ownership, which is what I took for myself, all of my volunteering allows me to help our realtors to shape what they're doing to be able to help their clients. So, when times get tough, and times have definitely gotten tough over my years of, volunteering, I had to look back at, okay, what is the reason, why do I do this? And I'm very lucky that I have a partner that's very supportive. And he would say, hey, it's tough, yes, but remember when you're answering that call for one of the members, in the middle of dinner, so that you can help them through their issues, so that they can help their clients. So it's just continuing as far as seeing our members and being able to help our members so that they can help the public. Because at the end of the day, we're all realtors, but we're in it for the public,
Right.
right? So
You just mentioned really taking care of the consumer and your customers. There is something that I think anybody who follows you on social media is going to wonder. It is every single day you are out with a customer having lunch or an old friend having lunch. Every evening, taking past clients or future clients out for dinner, plus all the time that you spend serving the association, plus the time that you spend serving the customers. And you are a very busy top producing realtor. I mean, you're constantly putting up top numbers in our office. For those of you that don't know, Kenny's in my office. I'm actually his broker. But you put up top numbers consistently, month after month after month. Where do you find the time to volunteer for the association, but then at the same time maintain all of those client meetings, not even just the ones that are making you money, but the thank you dinners and the thank you lunches and the birthday lunches. Where do you find the time for all this stuff?
it's a great question. So the time really actually comes fairly easy for me. I have an incredible support staff. Like I said, my partner at home is very supportive. My brokers, one of them being here, is hey, I need this done. I can do this. But really, more importantly, it's always been for me not about the quantity of my clients. It was always about the quality of my clients, and I've started that off from in the very beginning, from day one within me being a realtor. So it really comes very easy because the people that you're talking about are friends of mine. They're people that I care about. They're people that I want to see do well. that I enjoy my time. I don't really go to any of those dinners or lunches and be like, "Oh, no, get me out of here." I'm just like, "Hey, this is a great conversation with whoever I'm with." So if you follow that and you look at that, just know that those people that I'm with are all really, really great people, and none of them is because I feel like I have to do it. It's because I wanna do it. Goes into volunteering, same time with that question, it's all about what I really want to do. Where do I see the need? Where do I see that where I can help? Where can I make a difference? So again, when I'm volunteering, it's something I wanna do. Like, wanted to come here today and talk to our members, with this podcast, and, you didn't speak about it because you talked about me coming back, but, you've been doing this podcast now for us for over 100 episodes. And you actually, if people didn't see the 100th episode with Deanna, it was a great episode, and I would definitely say everyone should be looking at it, but thank you for all your time as you're talking about me giving my time, because look at this. I mean, look at this. This just keeps going. This is great for our members. I listen to this all the time and I watch it.
Oh, thanks, Kenny. It's not about me. It's about you today. You are widely recognized as a champion for professionalism in our industry. How do you define professionalism in real estate today, and how do you plan to strengthen that culture among our members?
So professionalism is something that's very key to me. It's actually very key to anyone who's in our leadership throughout the years. It's always been, I remember speaking about that back when we were first starting on our corporate board, about professionalism. So I'm going to actually shift the conversation to drop for a second, and I'm going to have an ask. And my ask for this with professionalism is I need everyone else's help who's a realtor with doing this. Sometimes it's not always the greatest thing on the opposite side of the transaction. And I see a lot of realtors are very easy to post about the fact that something wasn't perfect in their version of perfect, right? Because everyone has their different versions of perfect. So it wasn't perfect in their version. So they are really quick to go out on their social media and talk about, any negative about a realtor that they can do. There's no reason to do that because the people that are following them, they already know how great they are as a realtor. So they don't need to insult another realtor. And yes, in any profession, things don't go perfectly. So I'm really big about that piece. I'm trying to get that message across to our members as much as I can. The other piece of that is I have the pleasure of being, a mentor in the Leadership Academy. Again, I think this is my fifth year actually being a mentor in the Leadership Academy, and every year it grows and grows. And I was actually just with Emily. Actually, I showed up like 2 minutes late for this because I was talking to Emily, and we were talking about Leadership Academy, and then the changes. Looking forward to that for next year. So it's a matter of continuing to bring up the best leaders that we can bring up as an association, so that they can do the best for our members.
So you're saying if people are acting petty on the other side of the transaction, you don't need to be the petty one that jumps on social media to call it out. It's
Exactly.
my biggest pet peeve, guys. I
Mm.
hate that stuff.
It's just, it's just the reality is, remember the person who's following you already knows you're the best. That's why they're your friend. That's why they trust you. That's
Right.
why they're following you. You don't need to insult somebody else. I mean,
Kind of makes you look insecure.
um, yeah. Plus, it was used against us in the lawsuits.
Yeah, that's
So,
true. That's true. Um, let's talk about protecting homeownership rights. I know this is huge for you. Advocacy for property rights and homeownership. It's really at the heart of what we do as a profession, as an association. Why is protecting homeownership so important to you personally? I know that we kind of touched on it in the beginning. I mean, the guy wants to smell some fresh cut grass over here. This is important to him. Why is it important to you personally, and how will you use your platform to advance that cause?
that's another good question. Whoever prepared those, great questions. One of the things that we do within our association is going to Tallahassee, going to Washington, and advocating as far as for our members along with the public that we serve. So it's one of the things I'm definitely going to continue going. I don't think I missed a year. We did 1 year on Zoom that we were doing our meetings.
COVID guard.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
COVID guard. We did that. For the 1 year. I haven't missed that in over 10 years. And, we have so many different wins that we have, for our public and for our members. And I'd like to see us get the word out even more, just so everyone knows of all the different things. And I'm not going to run through a whole list of it because that wouldn't be fair to our listeners, and I don't want to do that to them. They can definitely look at that. But the real key to that is everything that we do is based on our clients, right? And who are our clients? Our clients are people, with home ownership. So what my drive is to make sure that my clients are always the best protected. So by me being able to be there and being part of this and being part of the conversation, I'm looking out for my clients, right? So it's really a great drive. And you know what? I own my own house. I'm a homeowner also.
Kind of matters to you.
I'm a homeowner also. So it's just a matter of just making sure that we keep that moving forward. Not only that, they always say if you're not if you don't have a seat at the table, you're on the menu.
Right.
Well, so if we don't make sure that our voices are heard, continuously, we're going to make sure that, we're not going to have that strong voice. By losing that strong voice, the conversation is going to be us, and it's going to be like, hey, let's cut this, let's do that. I mean, it's so many challenges now within our association and our entire profession.
Right, I agree. For those of you who don't know, I know we've talked about this on the podcast before, but when we're talking about GUARD, it's Great American Realtor Days, happens up in Tallahassee, capital Florida. Every one of our members is invited to attend. You do not have to be in leadership. You do not have to be on the government affairs committee. If you are an advocate for home ownership and private property rights, which every realtor should be, you are invited and you are most welcome to come to Tallahassee. It's in the beginning of the year, just at the end of the winter, in February, typically end of February, beginning of March. But one of the best events that you could possibly go to, sitting down toe to toe with the legislators that are making all of the decisions that really guide our industry and guide homeownership rights and private property rights. Fantastic event to go to.
So I'd love to actually see as many people there as possible. And when you do come or when you sign up, please let me know. Hey, I saw that on the podcast. I know I'm going to just shift again. Sorry about that, Chris.
No, go for it.
I'm really comfortable with Chris, so I can really just have a pretty open conversation with him. Can you actually share a story about Tallahassee and about a win that we had while you were actually talking to one of our legislators and you were in the office?
Yeah, I think I've shared this on the show before, but when we were in Tallahassee, I'm going to leave names out of it, but we did sit down with a legislator, and our appointment time was right after a critical vote for one of the bills that we were up there trying to advocate in opposition of. And that legislator had said, I just went down to the floor and voted yes. Why are you telling me that I shouldn't have voted yes? And we told him the story of how that bill was going to affect every single one of the property owners in the state of Florida. And he just didn't know. He had been misinformed by either his party or his staff on what that bill language actually meant. And he said, just hang on here for just a minute. I will be right back. He ran down to the floor and he changed his vote to a no vote. And that bill ultimately ended up failing in the legislature, which was a huge win for private property rights in the state of Florida. So if you don't think that what we are doing when we go up to Tallahassee really has any effect, it's affecting you as a homeowner, and it's affecting every one of the customers that you serve.
And that was just a really direct change that we were able to see within minutes.
Yeah, and it's
So,
super powerful what we do up there. Let's talk about your leadership style. So, to every leader that every president that we've seen throughout this association, they all have their own style. How would you describe your leadership approach? I'll tell you guys, I think Kenny has got one of the most unique leadership styles. You are crazy authentic, but describe that leadership approach and how do you hope it's going to inspire and guide both our seasoned and newer members of our realtor family?
so the way I take every leadership role that I have and everything that I get to do within leadership is basically looking at the member. I when I'm speaking with one of our members, it's all about listening to what they're saying. I really don't form my answer for them that I want to deliver to them before I finish hearing what they're saying. I hear what they're saying the entire time, and honestly, our members really love feeling like they're heard, right? And those of you who know,
Your voice is heard with our world.
here you go. Those of you who know, I started bringing that in about 3 years ago about your voice is heard with our world, and people have come up to me now and they're like, "Wow, everyone's using this now, and everyone's like quoting Kenny when Kenny says this." the only reason why that was able to catch on the way it did, to be honest, is because it wasn't just a tagline, right? Everyone could put in a tagline and and that's easy. That's just simple, right? I mean, you probably go to ChatGPT and say, "Hey, what's a good tagline?" And it'll probably give you one. So, but what I was able to do with that, because I really felt it and it really meant a lot to me, was to make sure that every concern that I get from one of our members, what I do with that is they don't always get what they want, right? And I tell them that when I'm listening to them and we're talking about it, but it's always brought to the places where possible change and where it can possibly have an effect. And then I go back to that member and I'm like, "Hey, listen, I talked to, a few different people and, we're going to make this change." Or, "Hey, I talked to, a few people and this is why we didn't make the change."
Right.
And one of the things that I've learned throughout my time is when I'm like, "Oh, well, why don't we do this? And this is just so simple. This is what we should be doing." And then all of a sudden you hear the back reasons why, and you're like, "Oh, really glad we're not doing this."
Right.
So I just bring that over down to the members. It's really about caring about them the best, and all of our leaders have always cared about our members. But I really want them to feel that. I don't want them to. It's not just a line. It's I want them to feel it. And what actually happens now, which is very interesting, a few years later, is I'm hearing from different members, "Well, Kenny, I'm starting to try to do that, within my leadership role." Also within, leadership again with, being, always not just talking to talk, because, talking the talk is very, very, very simple. It's always about walking the walk and always our members are always watching. Our members, I mean, I feel like I drive down 95 and one of our members is there. We're over 43,000 members, right? So I
Yep.
feel like one of them are always there. They're always watching. So it's not a matter of just saying it. It's a matter of making sure that you do it. That's like starts all the way back in my early time when I started on government affairs. That was my first committee that I started with because of my background. So I started, that's where I can make the biggest difference. And with being in government affairs, I was very involved with wanting to do different things, right? So what that did for me was it just allowed me to, keep going and being authentic to what was true to me and where it can go. So
I think that one of the most important things that I've noticed that you do, and I think we had this conversation back in 2023 when I was president. I had heard from a couple of our committee chairs during my year that had said, some recommendations came out of my committee. I had, sent them up to the corporate board. The corporate board, when it got to the corporate board, they had no idea what happened to it. So the flow of information wasn't going back to the committee chairs, or the regional boards, so they could disseminate that information to all of the leaders that they had either within their committee or on their regional board, whatever the case may be. So I'm really glad that that is something that has been carried forward, and you get to be that voice from the corporate board, the executive team, soon to be president in a couple of years now. That we've got that flow of information that's going back to the people that are really the voices of members, which are our committee chairs, our committee members, our regional board members. And they're boots on the ground. They're hearing what the problem is that's happening either in the profession or something that's happening within the association. It's amazing to see that the leadership styles and leadership changes that are happening. President Tim Weishire, Florida Realtors, we just heard him say, You're not going to remember me as soon as my year is over, but I hope that I'm going to affect some sort of change that is going to make the association better and the next leaders better." And I think little pieces of information like that and feedback that we get when we constantly give it to our leaders that are coming in, real change is starting to happen. And that need for the members to hear or to have their voice be heard, you're really championing that for them, and I think that's going to go a very long way as far as our association is concerned. So it's amazing the things that you're about to do and have been doing for our profession and for our association. So again, kudos to you and thank you for that.
well, thank you for that. I gotta give a shout out to Tim. Tim, the things that has done over the past year, and actually on his journey coming up to this year, because he didn't just become the president, right? He had a journey
Yeah.
coming up to this year. I think a lot of our members are going to feel for a really long time. So definitely shout out to him.
navigating challenges. We'll talk about that for a little while. The real estate industry is obviously evolving very quickly. We've got shifting markets that are happening right now, new regulations that have been in place, changing consumer expectations, which, the conversations that we're having with the consumer are a lot more in depth than they were just a couple of years ago. What do you see as the greatest challenge that our realtors are facing right now, and how can we tackle that together?
So pretty much the news, pretty much what the public is hearing on the news, what they're reading on the news. Everyone gives a little snippet, right? And we actually all
Clickbait.
yeah, we actually all kind of do that in our own personal lives when we're even talking to people, right?
Yep.
Why do I want somebody to listen to me when I speak? It's I give them something interesting to hear about, and then we go from there. The issue that we have is that, as far as is when they hear something and it's only one line or two lines of 7 or 8 lines. So the perception of us is really not at a high level. We've had a lot of issues on the national level. It's not just here on the local level, but we've had, issues on the national level, the state level, now into the local level. Everything trickles down for us of what we're going to be doing as far as for that. So we need to make sure that while we're doing that, we are just making it go into the right direction for what we need to do.
Agreed. Big time. Yeah, those clickbait headlines. I mean, people want their information so fast that you rarely actually go and read the entire article. So all you see is that headline, and that headline could be something terrible. And then you actually read the article and go, oh, it was a spin on, like, a little play on words. But that's not what people are retaining. They're retaining the headline as opposed to what the actual story said.
And it,
It's
it's
not,
usually
we're not as bad as what everybody said.
and it's usually at the end of the article where
Yep.
where the truth piece comes out,
Yep.
where you can understand it. And I
Last
say,
sentence.
how many people actually read all the way down to that far? And that brings into like the point that I spoke about earlier about realtors wanting to put out on social media about another realtor that didn't do things the way they expected to do. Right? It's not a right or a wrong answer. It's how they expect it, and we all. I do it with my business. I expect the realtor on the other side to be doing certain things. It doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it wrong. It just makes it, how I'm expecting it. But we just got to get away. We got to get away from that because we're feeding into that every time we write a post. We're
Right.
feeding into that every time we even have a conversation with another realtor. We're like, oh, this realtor, they did this and they did that. Listen, there's so many of us. Not everyone's going to do everything perfectly, and not everyone is going to do everything the way we want them to do it. So
Yeah,
that's
that's
really
not
the
the
big
stuff to
key.
be sharing. I will tell you guys, in case you didn't know, if you go to facts.realtor, NAR has fantastic marketing pieces that they already have produced. So if you want to put out content about what's happening in the real estate market or realtors in general, NAR has great resources. Florida Realtors also has fantastic resources that are basically white labeled, so you can brand it to yourself, pump that content out, and then right here locally, Broward, Palm Beach, and St. Lucie Realtors, Our World's got a whole video library and tons of social media graphics that you can put out for your customers and for your colleagues to see as well about what might be happening in the world of real estate. So pump out the good content and stay away from that clickbait kind of stuff. Looking ahead, if you could leave our members with one message about where we're heading as an association under your leadership, what would it be?
So, so first, so that we understand. So 2026, I'll be the president-elect under Jonathan Dolphus. 2025, we have the pleasure of having Jonathan Lixing. I know it gets a little confusing, Jonathan, but that's okay because we're not the only ones because for NAR, it's Kevin and Kevin. And we've had one Kevin for 2 years, so it's Kevin, and Kevin. So we're actually a little shorter than they are. So that's a really a great thing. So for 2026, a big goal of mine is to actually make sure that I do what I need to do to help our president, Jonathan Dolphus, do what he can do the best for our members. How does he give the best service that he can give to our members to make them, go further in their careers and in their what they're doing within our profession, right? So that's where I'm going to really focus right now is on 2026 making sure that Jonathan Dolphus, our president, is to the best level that he can be so that he can do everything he can do for all of our members. And
So
then
try to be the
2027, look out.
Best backup quarterback you could be until 2027.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting year. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm really glad that we're doing this today. It's 2026 is going to be wonderful under Jonathan Duffus. 2025 has been fantastic. In 2027, we're gonna have new struggles. We're gonna have new challenges in 2027. So for me to sit here in 2025 and be like, hey, this is what I'm gonna do in 2027, it's not really the fair thing to our members. If I already have that answer for you today, that's a problem.
Yeah, then you're
To be
doing it for
honest.
you and not them.
Yeah, it's the problem. It's
Yeah.
it's it's all I'm gonna see what our challenges are when we get closer to that. But now we'll look at 26 where, and we're gonna do the best we can for our members with, under Jonathan's leadership.
Well, I had David Searles, my president-elect. He did a fantastic job being my backup quarterback, my right-hand man, to make sure that everything ran smoothly during my year. And I tried to teach him everything that I was learning along the way, which I know Dolphus is going to do for you. But I've got to say, no offense to David here, but if I could have chosen to have a president-elect, you're going to bust your ass to make sure that Jonathan is going to shine. And whoever ends up coming up after you, I hope that they are going to work as hard for you as you're going to work for him. So, Dolphus, you've got a fantastic right hand man here. Last question for you, and then we're going to let you get back to work. We always ask every one of the guests on the podcast. I know that you've already been down this road because you were here before. So you got to have another hidden gem for us. And I know that you've got something fantastic up your sleeve because you're out every single night of the week
Yeah, okay, thanks. I go out a lot. So,
for dinner. For dinner.
yeah, I don't really go out anymore. So I would say that the best hidden gem is something that's really right in front of us that we see all the time if you're in the Fort Lauderdale area. And really what it is that Holiday Park, which is located in Fort Lauderdale, right off of Federal Highway, one of the biggest parks that we have within the city, it had a really bad reputation. Right? There was a lot of people who would be there that you didn't want to go into the park. Well, now in Holiday Park, we have, Parker Playhouse, which has always been there, but now they're getting even better shows. Now they upgraded Parker Playhouse. And War Memorial is there now, which is a concert hall, right? So we have all of the Panthers now practice there. So we have two indoor ice skating rings where you can have you can have a party for your kid or a party for an adult. Actually, I guess why does it have to be a kid? But you can have parties there, like ice skating parties. Tons and
And there's a
tons of
bar upstairs.
There's a bar upstairs, there's pickleball, there's new tennis courts coming. It's just, people just really need to revisit all that it has. And I'll tell you to me, a very cool thing was that from where I currently live now, I could walk over to the park. And one night we went out to a concert with a couple of friends, and we went to the War Memorial, which is absolutely a fantastic venue now. And then it was while the Panthers were, in the playoffs. And then we walked over and went to the Panthers watch party at the arena.
Okay.
And then we were able to walk home and we didn't have to deal with any traffic. It was fantastic.
Amazing.
So it's just a place that I really would love to see people just revisit, and it's always nice to go there. So that would be it.
Well, thank you for taking me to Holiday Park. I got to go on a really cool golf cart ride with Kenny down Las Olas. We went and hit up a new restaurant that was fantastic. And then he took us through Holiday Park to do a little tour of everything there. And I'll tell you, I was completely amazed because I have not driven through Holiday Park or gone to Holiday Park in years. It has absolutely changed from what it was. So if you remember it from 5 years prior, definitely take another spin through because it is vastly different. Kenny, thank you so much for being with us. Really excited to see your leadership journey continue. Hopefully, president of this association is not going to be the last stop for you because you've got a heck of a lot more to give back to your profession. So that being said, thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for watching. And we will see you right back here next Friday, 8 a.m. on Our World Talk.